Coogs house. The Houston Cougars might be a month away from the heart of March Madness, but they're in the middle of a weekend that feels a lot like dancing.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougars, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, and whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Appreciate you making your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Cougs. If you enjoyed the conversation, but you don't know what to say, in honor of tonight's opponent, the Texas Tech Red Raiders, tell us down in the comments down below what kind of tortilla you like your taco wrapped up in: corn, flour. There's probably some other option that I don't know about. Tell us down below in the conversation. It's brought to you by FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. We got more on that fun later. But man, we got a lot to get into today. 2 episodes out today on this Monday as we're getting ready for Texas Tech Monday night. Trying to wrap up what happened at Iowa State over the weekend. Get into a bunch of stuff this week as Houston looks to officially claim at least a share of the Big 12 title with a win on Monday night. Now, I don't want to move past Iowa State too fast. We got some of that to talk about as well. And then I also want to spend time in this show talking about how this weekend has felt a lot like March Madness for the Cougs and kind of gauge how we're doing in that. So I went back to watch Iowa State a second time on Sunday afternoon. And I got to say, I weirdly left that one more encouraged than I might have been Saturday afternoon when the game ended in real time. For those that might not have clicked into it, Houston beat up Iowa State team. They did it 68-59 on Saturday afternoon. College game day was in town. Great time, right? And Iowa State was down their leading 2 scorers, one of which comes off the bench. I think it total accumulated to like 32 points per game, like theoretically a lot. And so that Houston was in a close contest worried a lot of people. I think people concerned over yada yada. Couple things. One, Iowa State's one of those teams a lot like Houston. It was very visible in the second rewatch when you kind of know what's happening. You're paying attention to a few other kinds of details. A lot like Houston, frankly, a lot like Texas Tech, a lot like Auburn, a lot like Alabama. I haven't seen much Duke, but I think some like them as well. These top teams in the country where the culture is the biggest factor, right? And so you're playing a team down a couple guys, and it doesn't feel like it's certainly on the defensive end at all. Iowa State scored just 59 points. That might have been it, but the defense they played on Houston was just the defense they're going to play on everyone. Houston played a lot last year without Terrence Arsenault, the last part of the year without JoJo Tugler, and had to play a Sweet 16 game primarily 3/4 game without Jamal Shed. People weren't shedding tears for them. Texas Tech's been through their own kinds of stuff. Frankly, they played Houston without JT Toppin and won, right? We've seen teams overcome this a lot. This top tier of teams overcome things a lot. And so on the second rewatch, I'll get into something that stuck out to me in a second, but I got kind of caught up in I can't believe we're this close in the second half, whatever, live on Saturday. In a second rewatch, I think it feels a lot calmer to be like, okay, this is just that good a program, a lot like Houston's that good a program, a lot like, again, these top few dogs in the country right now are all those kinds of programs. Now, there was a stretch in this game where Houston could have put them away in a big kind of way and did not. With about 14, I have it written down here, 14-14 left in the second half. Houston scores to make it 45-29, and Iowa State calls a timeout. Come out of the timeout, and Lipsy, it's a 3. Then they come down in sharp travels. And then there's some back and forth, and then Uzan has a pass stolen away on the entry pass. Lipsy has a layup. Quick Tugler miss, ends up getting a foul going for the rebound. Surprise. And another sharp foul on the ensuing offensive possession for Iowa State. Baseline out of bounds play leads to a backdoor cut for an easy layup for them. Another turnover for Houston on Cryer high post entry. Momcilovic hits a layup on the other end. These are consecutive possessions. Boom, 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 right? And that's several turnovers in a row. You end up getting down to a foul on I think it was Sharp gets Momoslovic, and he's shooting free throws to get it to 45-40 with 11:20 to go. That's roughly a third of your season high turnovers. You had 17 turnovers on Saturday, and roughly a third of them come in this 3-ish minute window when you were up 16 and the lead is cut down to just 5. That's a moment you could have sunk them. You could have taken the lid off the Fertitta Center, really blown that game out the window. Instead, Iowa State hunkered down, turned you over a bunch of times, and got the game back to just a couple of possessions. And did you eventually extend the arm and keep them away? Yes. Were you able to kind of put the game away at the end with a big LJ Cryer performance? Yes. In fact, it felt like the solution once Houston calls a timeout at just after that 11:20 mark. The solution looked like to me was Houston goes, okay, we're not doing a bunch of this passing stuff anymore because the more they're moving the ball, the more they're turning it over, right? They set up in a couple space and pace kind of motions, maybe waste and dribble out some clock, space out, kick it to one pass, Sharp, Cryer, etc., and let that dude work. Once it was clear that it was going to be Cryer's kind of day in that situation, Cryer became that guy. Um, Uzan also, I think, Uzan was super aggressive in the first half at 14 points. Um, and it felt like in the second half, once he was turning the ball over, he got a little bit more timid with it. It felt more like November Uzan, frankly, if being really honest. And then, like, suddenly there's a moment after that 3-minute stretch where he was like, screw it, I'm going to go to the hole. And he attacked the rim, right? He got the rim and a great left handed layup, finish over the top. Frankly, really great left hand layup given the fact that he had a floater blocked earlier in the half. And then, like, the next offensive possession says big, like 15 foot. He steps back 15 feet backwards behind 3-point line for a big step back three. And that kind of got his swagger back a little bit. You kind of saw his like body language change a little bit after that. Again, seeing the second time and knowing what's coming at the end of the game, it's very clear that was kind of a big moment for him. Um, Obviously, Iowa State's defense forced those turnovers. So I don't mean to say this as if like not to give credit for the other team or whatever. I do think that had Houston even played just like even keel trading basketball for that 3-minute stretch from 14-14 down to about 11-20, you're looking at a blowout of a game. And I understand that like 3-minute stretches are part of it, right? But ultimately, I think that was the moment where I was hoping for a Houston blow the doors off this thing, would have settled for keeping it at about a 15-point lead the rest of the way. And instead, Iowa State came back and made it a game on great defense out of Lipsy, great defense out of Josh Jefferson, and great defense and great scoring out of Momoslovic. Now, I will say, like, Lipsy and Jefferson ended up with a bunch of steals. I think Jefferson had 7 as a power forward because of those kinds of troubles Houston was having getting the ball into that high post in the 15 to 25 foot area. Both Lipsy and Jefferson were able to get a bunch of pokes and steals in that. I'm sure they're drawing stuff up to fix that and having different fixes or whatever. I can go through what I would intuitively do, but I think it would be more interesting to see what they do Monday night against Tech, because Tech's a great defensive team as well, and they'll have something drawn up to kind of counter that, I'm sure. I will say that ultimately, this was a gritty, gutty win that Houston's going to look back on, I think, in a good kind of way, moving forward. As I look forward to Tech this weekend, again, all these top tier programs in America have had wins and had, tough games, et cetera, without top guys. And so I don't think I don't think they're going to dwell too much on that as they get into Tech on Monday night. Another marquee matchup. And I want to talk some about Tech and kind of whose revenge game this could really be as we get into Monday night in just one second. But first, today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks, and March basketball is just around the corner. There's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2-player projections. And if you're right, you can go up to 1,000 times your cash. It's fast, easy, and keeps every game exciting. You can look at different combinations of points and rebounds. Get into baseball season, look at that as well. Prize Picks offers even weekly and daily promos like Taco Tuesday and stuff like that. You get discounted player projections for even more value. You get your money back into your account, and that's as little as 15 minutes, so no waiting around. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Locked On College for $50 off $50 in your pocket instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. So that's $50 back instantly into your pocket. That's just too good to be true. I can't believe I'm reading that. That's what I'm reading right. I just can't believe that. $50 in your pocket for playing a $5 lineup. It's code Locked On College for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Park Rangers Locked On Coogs. You're talking about Houston's big weekend. They're finding themselves in the middle of here. Texas Tech Monday night revenge game. The question's just for who. Now, if you remember this game the first time around, I admittedly thought Houston, and a talent perspective, could win by double digits at home. I did, and then things went way far south in that one. Less than 4 minutes in the end of the game, JT Toppin, leading point man at Texas Tech, gets ejected on what was questionable call. We'll say it right. I've been on the record. I don't know that I would have ejected him for it. There's a level of intent they're assuming in ejecting him. Whatever. They eject him, and then the way they went about it upset Grant McCasland. They had coached Texas Tech, and they tossed him as well. And so Tech ends up winning that game in overtime by 1 point for Tita. Just the 7th loss Houston's had at Fertitta since the building opened. And Houston's undefeated on the road, heading up to Tech, wants to avenge that loss. On the flip side here, Lubbock, tough place to play, etc. Those fans are getting their first shot at Houston since that chaos went down. And obviously the referees had a lot more to do with the ejections than Houston did. I mean, the ejection was more or less because JT Toppin kicked JoJo Tugler below the belt. I mean, I don't think it was intentional. That's why I don't think I would have tossed him personally, but he did do it. and as you know, Houston isn't like saying you should eject that guy. If you go back, like it's not like Sampson's talking to the referee about ejecting the guy, and the referee comes on and just throws him out, right? And so while it's interesting where fans always put their blame on those kinds of things, their first chance to cheer at Houston against Houston, cheer at negative things at Houston or cheer against Houston, I should say, will be a boisterous one, I'm sure. Further, McCasland is a brilliant coach, and he's turned that Texas Tech thing back around faster than I thought he would. It's been about a year and a half, and they're back to playing really high-level basketball. I would have thought it's going to take a little bit longer. It did not. I I think that the deal there is he's looking to prove his worth as a coach. He's kind of a chess master of sorts defensively, and he sees Houston coming to town. It's kind of a chance for him to almost show off what he and his guys can do. Now, they're excited about the picture in the locker room of Toppin and McCasland and all that kind of stuff after the game, from having to sit there and watch the game in the Fertitta Center locker rooms. Whatever, right? I'm sure that some of that is authentic. I also think some of it is McCasland wants to be on the floor winning the game. There's got to be some bit of like, I can do this. I want to do that. Like that kind of an aspect. Not that he's like egotistical, but there's a little bit of that in everyone, right? I also think JT Toppin, who's a future NBA player and is trying to prove it, has some of that in himself as well. I think Texas Tech's really good when you watch him on film. It does feel like every 4th or 5th possession, if Toppin's kind of struggling to get going, he just takes a shot. I wonder if he's going to try and fit 2 games worth of highlight kind of plays into one game against Houston, or what that could do to what Tech is trying to do, right? I also think that Toppin's really, really good. I think Darian Williams, his front court teammate, is actually the important part of what they do. I just want to get in a little bit more. I mentioned Houston's undefeated on the road. Lubbock's one of the toughest places to play in America, let alone the Big 12. They have lost there twice this year. Iowa State beat them in Lubbock, and then Central Florida beat them as well. Now, Houston plays Central Florida really close, too, so I don't think we can judge a whole lot there, but losing to them at home is certainly interesting. Those are both in the first 2 weeks of conference play. It's been a minute. Texas Tech's a lot different looking team. JT Toppin is that dominant scorer. Great isolation players at 15 feet. He can turn over, make rush decisions if double teams. I'll be interested to see how that monster trap works on him in the second matchup. I maintain, I think Darian Williams is kind of their like workhorsey guy that lets JT Toppin really get loose. Um, Darian Williams is much stronger, big, strong, athletic, broad shoulders, almost looks like a defensive end sized guy. He can score it as well. He's not like not finesse or anything like that, but he's just a big bruiser that ultimately kind of like eats a lot of the physicality for JT Toppin to kind of be able to play on the perimeter more. And both guys rebound really well, but I think Toppin benefits from being 15 feet from the basket as opposed to being 5 feet from the basket. And Darian Williams is the one playing down by 5. Now, I will say in the last, like, it was just under the 10-minute mark of Texas Tech's game against West Virginia, Darian Williams went down with an ankle injury, looked pretty bad. He sat on the bench the rest of that game. They won that game by 22. So I don't know if that was function of the injury, function of the score, some combination. Houston on Monday, right? I don't know. The bigger thing for Houston, though, I think will be Chance McMillan, who I think sounds like talking to Chris Level at Locked On Texas Tech. There may have been something wrong with his foot or ankle at the end of the TCU game. Like he was readjusting his shoes a lot and stuff like that. Then he was in a boot on Saturday when Tech hosted West Virginia. Chance McMillan had 23 points when Houston and Tech played the first time around. He got super hot from behind the arc. Really, you know, the guy that came in for him, his name is Chris Anderson, Chris Anderson's a freshman, had a great offensive game against West Virginia, has been a good offensive guy this season for Tech. He's not quite the two-way player that Chance McMillan is. Chance McMillan's pretty solid defensively. One of those kind of remind you of a Coug kind of guys. And so we'll see, first of all, what Chance McMillan looks like, and second of all, what it looks like for Tech if he's available or not available. Is this the kind of thing where he had a nagging injury at the end of the TCU game and said, hey, let's just sit it on Saturday, get ready for Houston. They felt good about West Virginia. Was it a 50-50 shot? We don't know. In college sports, we don't get a whole lot of heads up on injuries in other programs for sure, but just injuries in general in college sports. And so we're still trying to figure out what we hear and see about Chance McMillan. His availability is a difference maker, though. So you got a couple guys here between Darian Williams, Chance McMillan, guys that can impact the game. I talked in the opening part of the segment like JT Toppin maybe trying to do too much, but that could not just be because of the first game, if not getting to play much at all, but it could be because in this one, they've got kind of a depleted roster. They only play 8 if you're looking effectively at their minute spread across all games, right? Like their typical minutes, like the minutes drop off dramatically after the top 8 guys, like a lot of programs do. I don't mean to say it's like unique to Tech or whatever, but after that, like you're suddenly getting some like dangerous territory about like, well, of that 8, now we're down 1, maybe 2, and they've done this a couple times before. Like Kerwin Walton's had to play big minutes and pass, not Kerwin Walton, Cambridge is the guy. Anyway, they've had guys that had to play big minutes in the past. Esmeli Yalaho, and he played a bunch of one game I saw on video, trying to watch more on these guys. And I say all that to say Tech might be going through it a little bit right now. Now, they lost the buzzer at TCU. They were down double digits in the first half against West Virginia. They ended up beating West Virginia by 22 points, but this could be the kind of game that, they see as a get back on track game with a great crowd. They want to like prove it against Houston. They want to do it again. They have every right to be confident against Houston. The only Big 12 team to beat Houston this year. Toppin's athleticism offers a lot of interesting troubles for Houston. Tugler's got to stay out of foul trouble to keep up with them. I'd imagine Jawan gets a lot more of the matchups, Jawan Roberts, that is, just because he's more comfortable playing on both interior and exterior out perimeter levels of defense. And Toppin does like to drive out from like 15, 20 feet away from the basket. You got to have someone that slides their feet very well. Both these teams play slow, long possessions. Both these teams shoot 3 well. Both these teams want to grind you out and play a really ugly, mucked up version of basketball. It's going to be a fun one on Monday night in Lubbock. Admittedly, when I predicted Houston would win by double digits and Fertitta back in the day, I also feel like I wrapped that up by saying, and then they could very easily turn around and lose one on the road in Lubbock on Monday night. This is a tough matchup for anyone. And the kind of adversity we saw Iowa State just play through, we saw the same Texas Tech program play through earlier this year. We saw Auburn play through when they had the whole plane fiasco. That same type of adversity could just be what's being mixed up here with all these different injuries they've got going. So I think you got to kind of throw that out the window and just like watch the game and the cultures for what they are. These are two alpha dog type of teams in the Big 12 playing for a shot at the title. Tech has to win to have a shot at the regular season Big 12 title. Houston wins to clinch at least a share of it. And that's a big, big deal to both these coaching staffs. I think it's going to be a big, big deal as we see them compete on Monday. Now, we're in the middle of this big weekend of like feeling like March Madness. We play at Iowa State. We got Texas Tech coming up. I want to kind of take a gauge on where we are and where we could be going in just a second. But first, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to be in on it than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because with FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. Even if you miss the opening tip or want to bet the fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps up with every moment of the game and keeps it exciting. Whether you're backing your team for late game rally or picking a player to hit that clutch three down the stretch, never miss your chance with FanDuel. The app is easy to use. You win, you get paid out instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers get $150 back in bonus bets if that first $5 bet hits. Just visit FanDuel.com to win today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 back in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, as a sportsbook partner of the NBA. Parker Ranger locked on Coogs from Houston, Tech, Iowa State, this very March Madnessy feeling weekend. And I proposed that on Friday. I want to revisit that, talk about what we're feeling halfway through that, talk about where we could be going at the end of that. So on Friday, really kind of even floated on Thursday, I've been discussing this Saturday against Iowa State, Monday against Texas Tech. Iowa State at the time was ranked 8th, Texas Tech at the time was ranked 9th, as if it were a Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four championship game kind of March Madness weekend. In those March Madness weekends, people kind of forget it's really about winning 2 games in 3 days, 3 different times, right? You win 2 games in 3 days to open in the 64 and 32, get a couple days to recoup. You win 2 games in 3 days against Sweet 16 Elite 8, you get a few days to recoup. Final Four championship game, right? Now, obviously, the goal is to come down the nets at the end of that 6-game stretch, but you kind of have to divide it up and divide and conquer, divide and conquer. You can't look too far forward. Your scouting staff has doing like all kinds of stuff on all 3 teams you could potentially be playing and getting ready for all possible scenarios. And then after 2 games in 3 days, you get to come home and regroup, right? And this felt like those 2 games in 3 days against high level opponents, right? Iowa State's top 10 team, Texas Tech's top 10 team. That feels very Sweet 16 Elite Eight, if not Final Four championship game. Now, even with Iowa State's injuries and things like that, it was a hip flexor, something in the leg to Gilbert, and Curtis Jones was sick, or I might have that backwards or whatever, right? But even with those, Iowa State, from a culture perspective, a scoring perspective, just having a guy like Momcilovic on your roster perspective, and Taman Lipsey and Otzelberger as a coach, that team feels very Sweet 16 like at the very least. Frankly, all healthy and put together, they're probably going farther than that, right? And so, very Sweet 16 kind of feeling kind of game. You win that one, won it ugly, but you won it. And now you're moving into what feels like the Elite 80 kind of game. Now, admittedly, Texas Tech may be battered, beaten, and bruised. We don't know. There's all kinds of hypotheses floating out there on whether or not they are, and some guys did and did not play on Saturday. But from a preparation perspective, if you're Houston, you're preparing for this like all 12 of them suit up and their main 8 play and all that kind of good stuff, right? And at this halfway point between those two games, I feel like Houston is passing the test, but also finding ways to focus on getting better once it's over. Because I thought this stretch that felt like that was really important for Houston because then, you know, Tuesday, Wednesday, you can kind of sit back and grade how you did, right? And in grading how you did, say, look, we lost track this, lost track that, and need to be better here, better prep there, whatever, right? Uh, you can't have in a Sweet 16 game a 3.5 minute stretch where you can't hold on to the basketball and giving up layups like Houston kind of did against Iowa State. They won the game. I think it was, I guess, a 9 point win. It was double digits for a stretch there. So, sure, you win the game and pass, but you got stuff to work on still. And now you're going into Monday night. And look, I think Houston wins a close one on FanDuel. It's a 1.5 point Houston favorite. On KenPom, I think it's a 1 point Houston favorite. I think this is going to be a close competitive game. I think Houston has continued to get better since they saw Tech last, and Tech has kind of hit a rough spot in the road, right? And so I feel like things are trending towards Houston. I could even be convinced, frankly, that when Houston had the big lead in the second half against Iowa State, there's some of like, now let's go get Texas Tech that creeps into your mind and you kind of forget about the task at hand. I could even be sold on that. It'd be very not Samson of this team to have had that happen, but I could even be sold on that, right? Um, if you get the C against and you just barely pass against Iowa State, but then you rock out with an A against Texas Tech, I don't think it's a 50-50 split. I think you feel pretty good about it coming out on Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday when you're breaking it all down, right? Now, I also have said I think the Big 12 regular season champion probably has 2 or 3 losses. Houston sits here with just one, which means that I think they might lose another game or two. This is probably the most losable game left on the schedule. You got 4 Big 12 games left. Um, Losable in the sense of like it'd be understandable. It's a good team, good program, great coach on the road, tough place to play, right? All that. Um, I, I guess I feel worried about that because I do feel like Houston should win. I do feel like Houston's good enough to win. I frankly feel like Houston's good enough to beat most teams. They played Auburn to 5, Alabama to 5. One of those being an overtime. This Tech team, you took the overtime the first time you played them. And so I say all that to say that I'm feeling good about this, not great about this. Um, I'm thinking it's a less than 2 possession game and Houston wins. It's probably really a 1 possession game and they get fouled and shoot free throws or whatever, right? Um, you know, Tech is a well-coached team, and I got a lot of respect for McCaslin. I again thought he was more than a 2-year project. He signed up. He's got it turned around in 18 months. Um, but I think Houston's just continuing to trend in the right direction. And again, you take out that 3-minute stretch that I'm talking about against Iowa State, and that one really might have been a whole lot more visceral kind of beatdown, like it probably should have been, right? And so that's, I think, why I'm leaning into that direction, even though this one is at the, what do they call it? The USA? I don't know. Wherever they play at Texas Tech, right? Um, I say all that to say that be careful for a JT Toppin kind of game where he gets a lot of isolation buckets. He's a really tough cover. He catches the ball about 15 feet away and can go either hand, can pull up in the mid range, can attack the rim. I trust Roberts on him, but it's going to really be a team defensive effort. As far as the rest of these guys go, Chance McMillan, we'll see if he's playing or not. The Christian Anderson guy is very similar score, but not the same defender. If they're both on the floor, it's a lot of points per game potentially on the floor. I think Darian Williams is important to them, but I also saw him leave the game with bad ankle injury. So we'll see how all that goes. And we're going to be live after the game as well here at Locked on Coogs. So subscribe, hit the bell so you know we're live on YouTube. We'll also get that out to you on Tuesday morning if you're more of an audio listener as well. So make sure you check us out wherever you get your podcasts each and every day. Locked on Coogs, primarily Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Cougs.